Well, hello, that's me again. Today is March 4th, and the season of admissions, so to speak, has started. And by the season of admissions, I'm talking about the general mood and some those small pieces and bits of truth and reality which begin to trickle down in the otherwise completely corrupt and dirty Western media and political class. Let me start with this thing. We already know that U.S. State Department and people who run it, they just basically lie non-stop. And so was the case with the situation when Mr. Blinken literally ambushed Mr. Lavrov, and Russian Foreign Ministry had to respond to it yesterday when they stated that Minister of Foreign Affairs Sergei Lavrov and Mr. Anthony Blinken, they didn't discuss any affairs of the imprisoned Mr. Paul Whelan in Moscow. And basically, the only thing Blinken wanted to do is to do the only thing they can do. They are totally incompetent people. The PR. He stated something about traditional, bullshit about Russia withdrawing troops from Ukraine, and that's about it. And obviously then they completely misrepresented the whole conversation, the same way as Mr. Burns did when he was speaking to Chief of the Foreign Intelligence Service of Russia, Mr. Narishkin. They just lie. They just make shit up, the same as the White House spokesperson now calls Russia People's Republic of Russia. I mean, we are talking about people who are completely incompetent, ignorant, and now, of course, we have the situation which kind of pushes them overboard, specifically because they were so stupid as they blew out of proportions. I mean, it's important, still, make no mistake, strategically even important, but it's not kind of definitive in the overall picture of the titanic struggle we have geopolitically today. But the issue of Bakhmut, Artyomovsk, and for all intents and purposes, Bakhmut is being abandoned as I speak to you by armed forces of Ukraine. It's pretty chaotic issue there. I mean, they are withdrawing, and they try to withdraw, really. They have some units, including obviously very many foreign mercenaries there, trying to hold some kind of corridor, but again, operational envelopment, encirclement, the same, well, there is a pretty much tactical now. There's only one corridor there, one single road, which they try to use, but it is under complete fire control of Russia. Russian forces, primarily around Bakhmut, are Wagner people who fight there, and as Russian news resources report, their withdrawal is pretty chaotic, and they use anything they can do, and they try to escape over the field and forests, what have you, there, and that's just the result of what essentially amounts like yesterday. You can take a look at Judge Napolitano talking to this one of those American journalists, reporters embedded with Ukraine, that he admitted that the fact that Bakhmut already fell. Well, yeah, it fell, a big deal, in terms of, another point on the map, but they put so much significance on that, being stupid, obviously, and I'm talking about primarily American and generally Western journalists into this, because they were sucking on the fat teeth of the Kiev regime propaganda, that now they have to admit that, oh my God, this thing just fell. But by far more important, it wasn't the fact that it fell, and obviously anybody who has half brain and IQ above room temperature, they understand that roads do matter, and Bakhmut opens the road to Kramatorsk and then to Slavyansk and things of this nature. So it's clear, anybody who had half brain knew it was coming, but let me kind of give some explanation on this. Many people are beginning to discuss Mr. Jeffrey Sachs, who stated about the losses of the Mr. Jeffrey Sachs, he stated about losses of armed forces of Ukraine on the February 28th in accordance to CNN. People started to look up immediately CNN info on that issue, but I think so we have to kind of keep in proper perspective what is happening here. Nobody can find the CNN piece of news, and Jeffrey Sachs allegedly took it from some of the Russian Telegram channels. First, I don't read Telegram channels. I do not rely on them unless it is Telegram channel of Maria Zakharova and Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. The rest of it primarily junk. But here it is what Mr. Jeffrey Sachs states, and here is the point. This is not incorrect. He's talking about that essentially Ukrainian general staff admitted that 259,000 have been killed, wounded was about also 247,000, so they deserted about 83,000, captured about 30,000. So all in all, even if there is no news about it, Jeffrey Sachs, who is definitely not your regular, talking head, he's speaking pretty much relatively real numbers, because this is what it amounts to. And as Bakhmut and its envelopment showed, I mean, those people there, they are not really that smart. I mean, talking about armed forces of Ukraine, and they do it all about PR, because the PR is directly connected to the status of the political forces in Washington D.C. and those American generals who, I mean, they hate Russian gods, and that brings us to the key point of this conversation today. I don't know what the hell is going on with American generals, not all of them, but many of them, especially the retired, and especially who do abuse sinecures as military analysts and all kinds of the American mainstream media outlets. They evidently are not very well educated in terms of strategy and operational art. Could it be the case? Well, let me put it this way. You cannot exclude it at all. You can indeed consider the possibility of many of those people who obviously pushed away, so to speak, their, like the swimmers in the swimming pool, their careers from all this, mythology and, blown out of proportion accomplishments in Iraq, first and second Gulf Wars. So when you look at this, I mean, they do not understand the subject of war, really, and you cannot blame them. They never really fought anything like this in their lives. And when you look at the doctrinal development of the American armed forces and NATO, you look at it, and it's not just the coin which killed it. It's what killed it was absolutely disastrous and absolutely unrealistic geopolitical assessment of their main enemy, which is, of course, Russia. And here we have this general, just to demonstrate to you. Here's that General Hartmann. I don't know, he works for CNN, and he's talking about why it is not a good time for Putin in Russia. I don't know what his qualifications of this General Hartling are, but obviously he has no clue about subject he's talking about. And then here's this guy again, and he's talking to Washington Post. And he says that why Ukraine will win the war. And he's retired lieutenant general, and he spoke about this on February 20. And by now, actually, even the White House doesn't believe that Ukraine can win the war, whatever they define by win. If they talk about basically demographic catastrophe in Ukraine, and they think that this is the winning of the war, and of course Ukraine losing one position after another, well, you know what, they redefined recession, they redefined economy. But in order for you not to have any second, so to speak, or doubt, if you wish, second thought on this issue, let's call up on the modern, current SASUR, Supreme Allied Commander Europe, Mr. Kavoli, General Kavoli, who is the Supreme Commander of the forces in Allied forces, NATO forces in Europe, and look what he says. And first, you get into this. It's a trash. Business Insider is a primarily trash media, but still, you can begin to, point out this very interesting situation that they begin to kind of change their narrative. And here's what the headline was about months ago. Losses in Ukraine are out of proportion to what NATO has been planning for, the alliance top general says. He was telling this to Finnish audience while speaking in Finland, obviously in the preparation, I think, with Finland joining NATO. But look at this. And here's him speaking on YouTube. You can look it up. It's on the wonderful resource of Judge Napolitana, and he is talking about here absolutely. NATO Supreme Allied Commander never expected what we are seeing. And this is obviously, they use the comment by my friend Scott Ritter, but look at this. This is what Cavoli talks about, and this is actually corroborates the numbers and actually the doctrine and basically strategy of this war by Russia, which basically hits hard, including now the White House, when they begin to understand that things are going really badly. Here it is. Here's the quote by Mr. Cavoli, and here it is. Scale, scale, scale. U.S. Army General Christopher Cavoli, NATO's Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, told the Swedish Defense Conference in January. Oh, pardon me. It was in Sweden, not in Finland. In January, the magnitude of this war is incredible. The Ukrainians have 37 frontline brigades, plus dozens more territorial brigades. The Russians have lost almost 2,000 tanks. Well, it's absolutely not true, but hey, he's American general. He needs to lay his butt hurt. So, if we average out since the beginning of war, the slow days and fast days, the Russians have expended on average well over 20,000 artillery rounds per day. And as he speaks, the scale is out of proportion with all our recent thinking. Well, let me put it this way, and I can only insist on you quoting me on that. I am for decades now on the record. They don't have thinking there in Pentagon. They don't know subject. They don't know Russia. They don't understand how real wars are fought, because they never fought a real one since World War II. And that is why and again, Russians do not fight war. I stress it again. You can quote me on that. Russia fights still special military operation, going out of its way to preserve as many civilian lives as possible and avoiding sometimes targeting things which otherwise would have been targeted during war. As I already stated, it is called special military operations for a reason. Because if Russia would fight the war, and you can look up my all kinds of videos from Garland Nixon to Anya to just what have you, and I speak it constantly about it. The fact is, war allows much more freedom, so to speak, liberty, if you wish, in terms of the civilian casualties and in terms of the civilian infrastructure. And if NATO wanted war with Russia, guess what? NATO wouldn't have immediately, within 48 hours. Primarily, most of the satellite assets will be taken out of service, and Russia will start shooting down those AVACs and Global Hawks and what have you, which are even near the border of Ukraine or within Ukraine, and whatever is now left of the Ukraine. This is what people do not understand. But hey, at least Cavoli says that, yeah, it was beyond our thinking. Of course it was. When you fight the guys with the sandals and AK-47s, in Afghanistan, and you have total domination of the informational environment or domain. They love this word, domain, So what do you expect? And the same goes for ISR. It's intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance complex. When you have this unobstructed, that's what they got used to fighting against people who are 2-3 generations behind in terms of weaponry, in terms of weapon systems. And suddenly, you have the best force they ever had in the history of the United States. I'm talking about the proxy force, which is, of course, the Ukrainian army and all kinds of those tens of thousands of volunteers from Poland, Germany, Europe, and United States. And they had their asses handed to them and being annihilated in the industrial amounts. What's left of those generals, American generals? Lie. That's what they do. They never thought about the situation when they have to fight real combined arms warfare, and they now find themselves with their countries, their alliance, which cannot produce shit. Pardon my French. So, and here we have, and even Cavoli has to admit it. Obviously, he, again, as I already stated, he BS's about the Russian tank losses, but hey, whatever, just look at him. So then you have General Milley, who begins to say, oh, US hosts yesterday war games for Ukrainian commanders. He's talking about, and he now begins to obviously crawl away from this whole mess his generals created, because they cannot prosecute any serious war. They just cannot. They don't have enough skills, they don't have enough knowledge to do that. If you think so that Mr. Petraeus or King or Kellogg, they know how to command real serious force under the real combat conditions, well, I have a bridge to sell you. They have no clue. And here it is. No one is sitting here telling the Ukrainians go left or go right or do this or do that. That is not the job of the international community. No shit, pardon my French. Actually, it is. And United States, while providing war gaming, also actually provides this fundamental C4 ISR to the what's left of the third iteration of the Ukrainian armed forces. C4 ISR, of course, you all know. Command, control, computers, communications, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. United States and NATO are de facto controlling the combat operations in Ukraine. And now they want to kind of disengage from that, and they want stop the attachment to what is unfolding. Well, military disaster, I'm sorry, that's how it's called. They thought that they can outplay and outthink Russians. I'm quoting my friend, the colonel of the central apparatus of the of the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, and liaison with the general staff people there. And those are my friends, those are my environment in which I also continue to maintain some contacts. And Vladimir Truhan, he is plain simple on the record. They will never outthink us. Absolutely. They do not have enough these data sets. They do not have enough experience. They don't have this general staff culture to even pretend that they can fight real serious war with Russia. And I'm talking about not nuclear war. Well, I'm talking about the conventional war. And there you go. As the result, you have all those generals now just, trying to admit that, oh my God, we got our ass handed to ourselves. And yeah, that's what it is. It was expected. And people didn't understand actually how Russia was going to fight it from the get-go. But evidently, when we begin to look at the larger picture, we can have and we can see the Russian strategy popping up in the front of your eyes. It is the war of attrition. It is the militarization, not of Ukraine. Ukraine was demilitarized. Ukraine actually was denationalized, if you wish. There is no existence of Ukraine without NATO, without United States. But it was the militarization of NATO. If they want to send their weapons, whatever they have now, and like, oh my gosh, those Leopard tanks, send them. See what happens. And they know this. They know they don't have numbers. They know they don't have technology. And that's another whole other story. I will have to basically elaborate on that, because we're talking about a complete technological implosion of the technological doctrine, of the procurement policies, of which many people warned, actually. That those militaries, NATO militaries, are not designed to fight real war. They are basically, well, nobody says they are paper tigers, for example, but I mean, they just cannot fight a real war. They don't have proper equipment for that. They don't have TOE, Table of Organization and Equipment, for that. It is primarily expeditionary forces to beat the shit out of the third world militaries. That's what it is. And we have the situation, and those American generals suffering and trying to allay, their butt hurt and things of this nature. So there you go. But if you want to hear even more about, for example, like General Hartmann stated that there are bad times for Putin in Russia. Obviously, the guy doesn't even understand what Russia is. He has zero competences in there, as most of the people in the within the Beltway today have it. And we discussed the situation that they have no clue what they're talking about when speaking about Russia. But here's S&P, and again, look at this. This is today's news. And this is a 4th of March, and Russian business confidence soars. Well, look what they write. The Composite Purchasing Managers Index (PMI) soared 53 to 53.1 from 49.7, indicating expansion in private sector business activity as a renewed rise in service sector output and a quicker upturn in manufacturing production supported growth. A reading above 50 separates growth from contradiction. Color me surprised. Well, basically, I am on the record, and many people, like the level of like Michael Hudson, people who understand at least how their societies, well, I cannot say about me that I understand how societies work, but I have a clue about what is Russia economically, and they were talking about this. Russia is growing. Russian economy is growing. And while they desperately try to redefine the recession in the United States because they have to hide the horrible statistics and horrible situation on the labor market and financial markets and what have you, Russia continues to grow. Fact is, if you look attentively at Russian exports, even of oil, it's actually growth. Russia exports grain. It's grew tremendously, apart from Russia being number one producer of grain, exporter of grain in the world. I mean, not producer, but exporter. And when you look at this, you have to ask yourself a question. Do those people understand what they're talking about? No, they don't. They never studied the subject. And again, because of the stream of the news, I constantly have to kind of resort to commenting on this news minutia, and operational and strategic situation. But I will have to make several videos about Russian history. They don't know Russian history. Those people in the West Point, in all those Georgetown, what have you, Stanford, and they don't know. It's not being taught. They are taught some kind of baloney there, and Russian dissident view, which is basically hate-filled, and of course this mythology from the Tsarist Russia by white immigration, and as a result they have perverted picture, caricature of Russia, and they don't understand how Russia fights. They don't understand what Russia economy is, what culture is, and what is going on there at all. But you know what? Those are people who are running the United States now, and we are definitely still not out of the woods in terms of the possibility of escalation to the nuclear threshold at some point of time. But you know what? Even the presence of Scholz in Washington and kind of this season of admissions, so to speak, starting in earnest as of last month and continuing into this month, we can understand that they do not want to deal with this anymore. They do not mind killing more Ukrainians, and Russia will, gladly oblige and kill as many as they will throw. And then, of course, they can throw whatever they have in NATO, and NATO will be destroyed. But I mean, they understand that the situation is really out of control in terms of their plans. And again, not plans. I shouldn't use this with S in the end, it's in plural. No, they never had plans. They don't know what planning is. They had a plan, and the plan was Plan A, and it was to demolish Russia economically. They do not understand what economy is. They do not understand what military art is, and they do not understand what strategy is. And again, you know the name of my first book, and again, it was being written 17 primarily, which was the Losing Military Supremacy, the myopia of American strategic planning, which would imply that America at least has strategic planning. No, United States doesn't have real strategic planning. It has the bipolar disorder in foreign relations and now wants to fight China. And this is a whole other story, because obviously they failed on this front in Russia, but the Russians have their proverb, «Коготок увяз, все птички пропасть», which means literally, one talon is in the swamp, the whole bird will die, so to speak, if to crudely translate it. And that is exactly what happened. They thought to demolish Russia fast, as Hitler and Wehrmacht thought. you know what, but then again, Wehrmacht and Hitler were, and Prussian and Wehrmacht general staff, they were level above whatever United States has in terms of planning, but even they had the same plans. You know how it all ended. So Russia is not going to take Washington. The Russians are not interested in actually defeating America physically and annihilating. Russians are, in this respect, a very humanist people. But I mean, yeah, I already stated before speaking to some of my friends in Russia that the task looks like for the Russian military political elite, the task have been stated as to regime change in Washington. How do you change regime in Washington? Namely the Biden regime, which brought world on the basically brink of the World War III and nuclear exchange. Well, by means of defeating NATO on the battlefields in Ukraine. And everybody understands now that suddenly that what it means, the loss in Ukraine. It means, of course, the fundamental change in the dynamics of NATO evolution, which most likely will bring about the collapse of it, and of course European Union will follow, or maybe other way around, doesn't really matter. I mean, those corpses, so to speak, have to be removed from the political arena, from the geopolitical arena, before fully a completely new world order is established, which will be more just, and in which the United States will have its own significant weight, but it will never again have the right to declare or self-proclaim itself as hegemon, because it is not. It is absolutely not. It actually doesn't have any kinds of the features anymore which show that it is hegemon. And we can discuss the definition here of hegemony whatever we want, and we will probably. But yes, does Kremlin want a regime change in Washington? Yes, absolutely. It's absolutely normal for them now to see who is going to be removed. I mean, preferably the whole Biden administration. And of course, new people, new generation of American politicians coming online who will be reasonable and with whom you can have any kind of dealings in terms of the new security structure and even economy. So, and this is what is important. But to show you why they are morons, all of them, in conclusion, here it is, guys. Here's another Australian paper. They created this paper as among those people who created this paper of their critical technology tracking. It's the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. The only one is physicists, the others are political scientists. And guess what? SPI Critical Technology Tracker, the global race for future power. So, and guess what they say? If you begin to look at how they define power, look at this. I deliberately give you this kind of run. Okay, advanced aircraft engines. You see, defense, space, robotics, and transportation. Top 5 country rankings. Okay, we have aircraft engines. We have China. We have India. We have Iran. Who is actually missing here? Yeah, you bet your ass. Russia is missing here. Russia, which produces the advanced engines for all spectrum of advanced engines from the combat aircraft, and actually these are outstanding engines. But there you go. Then you have the space launch systems. Look at this. You have United States, you have China, Germany, you have South Korea. Actually, you look at this and you have to scratch your head. I mean, this is what is called pseudoscience. This is a bullshit which is being taught in all those strategic studies across the board in the West. And that is why you have the American generals who have no, don't know shit from Shinola. And in any normal army, they wouldn't be allowed to run, to command battalion, because they don't understand what it means to command a really serious army under serious combat conditions. But there you go. Here's your another institute, strategic institute, which is absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, so Russia, which is a dominant power in the space exploration, Obviously, it's not even there. Not to mention the fact that when you look at Russian combat aviation, it flies on its own state-of-the-art engines, and Russia produces all spectrum of their small to medium jet engines for commercial aviation. So, but hey, what do I know, so, but this is just a very good demonstration of what we're talking about and why this season of admission started, and it will continue for a while because they cannot tolerate it. Their butts hurt badly. They are sore losers, but they have to admit, because in the end somebody will have to also answer for hundreds of thousands of people killed in Ukraine, and basically the country being destroyed completely. So, well, they better think about it. I know many of them don't because they are so ignorant. And this is what I wanted to tell you today, and this is for your Saturday and your weekend. And as always, guys, my profound thanks to my wonderful patrons, and those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee or two. And as always, try to try to join my channel if you like what I do. And this is it for today, guys. Have a nice weekend, and I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.